For the people watching and listening, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Now Do with Dio, the podcast where each week we dive deep into the power of storytelling to help us to move forward. Through the lens of personal narratives, we explore the moments that change us, challenge us, and ultimately champion our growth. Because it's not just about the stories that we tell, but it's also about the actions that we take.
There we go.
With me, I have a very, very special guest and best friend slash brother from another mother,
Let's go.
about to be father.
Yep.
And he's joining us all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is why the formatting of this episode is a little bit different, but we can make it work. We always find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And Marcel, this is usually a question I ask last of my guests, but
Sure.
I'm going to start this with you.
Special.
And that question is, who are you?
Well, that's a loaded question. A simple question, but also loaded, right? Well, first of all, I'm a child of God, right? That's my very core identity. I am a beloved son of the Father in heaven. So that's my core identity as a son. Other than a son, I am a husband to my lovely wife, Brianna Lu. We are expecting our first child, in April. So pray for us, for those of you who are listening. Um, and yeah, I am working as a team director, missionary with organization called Focus Fellowship of Catholic University Students.
Mhm.
So this organization sent missionary across the country to serve at college campuses, um, not only in United States but also in outside of the country as well, such as Germany and stuff like that. But yeah, I serve on college campuses, serving the Lord in that way. Yeah, I try to introduce the gospel to many college students because a lot of young students, the college students, are looking for um, something more. As you probably know, you were in college once as well, and I was as well. We were looking, we're asking ourselves, a lot of questions, right? And the big question sometimes I think we find in college is, what is my purpose, and what am I made for? What is something that ultimately can make me happy? And
Mm,
so, for us, we try to go to colleges and we, meet students where they're at as Jesus did, meeting the disciples where they're at. And we try to, just be their friends, meet them where they're at, be their friends, evangelizing through friendship. And then we invite them to Bible study eventually, and then do what Jesus did, investing in a few, and then through Bible study, and then we invite them and challenge them to enter into discipleship just as Jesus did.
mhm.
And yeah, and eventually teaching them to do the same so that they can teach others to lead other people towards Jesus. And so that's what I do as work. But long-term goal, I believe that God is calling me to be a counselor, a therapist. So I'm going back to school for that. So long-winded answer, but my core identity, who am I? I'm a child of God.
Beautifully said. You were definitely preparing for this type of question, huh? And I know this is almost like, an elevator pitch of, tell me a little bit about yourself, that
Right.
interview question. And I always feel and a firm believer that, anyone who that doesn't have to be someone who has a professional job, right? But I think everyone and anyone should be prepared for that type of question,
Right.
because it's important to really know who you are, know your identity, know what purpose you walk for in your life. And
Yeah.
that's why I kind of started off with that with
Yeah.
us. So I want to take a little bit of a memory lane before we get
Yeah.
into it a little bit. And
Oh boy.
I think one of the main things I remember, and I'm gonna try to say this in the right chronological order based on my memory is that
Okay.
when you first came to the States, I remember us going to a lot of basketball games at the YMCA with your little brother Ferdinand, and I think Nick was there too a couple times.
Right. Young Nick.
And fast forward a couple of times, we had a couple of guys' night when we were young, a lot of sleepovers. We would play a lot of video games,
Our
and
best
it
times
was
in our life.
oh man, those were the easier times, man. The
Oh,
easier
yeah.
times. And I remember one day when we went to the Y, I think it was a Saturday afternoon, and I had parked my bike on that
Oh,
on
man.
that bike lock thing, but
Yep, yep.
I didn't properly lock it. And when we walked out from the game, it was just gone.
It's gone. Somebody stole it. It's in Philly,
And I
right?
remember yeah, I remember this was Philly yeah, this was in Philly, and I remember walking back, I said, "Marcel, my mom's gonna kill me, that bike is so like, it's over, it's over." And I think ever since then, our friendship kinda went on a very positive trajectory in that, like, we just became closer and closer. But then,
Yeah,
like, fast forward when, we get a little bit older, you went off to college, I was still in high school at the time, and
yeah,
I think there were gaps in our friendship where obviously you were spending a lot more time in college and, meeting new people. And I think just one day I remember all of a sudden you start to really talk really, really a lot and preach a lot about just being a Catholic, like a very strong Catholic, right? But to be honest with you, I think at the time when we were friends, I don't think my faith was as strong as it is now. And I want you to talk about, if you could remember, just
yeah.
kind of that transition, right? From just being a kid who was going to church because he had to, because this
Right.
is what he had to grow up with,
True.
to eventually, oh, I'm going to walk this path seriously and this is what I want to do.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, first of all, those memories were crazy. When we were young, that was an
Yeah.
awesome time. Looking back, we can laugh at it now, but I'm pretty sure at the time we were like, "Dang, this is life or death situation." But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I grew up Catholic, my whole life. And yeah, ever since I remember, I was baptized as a baby as Catholic, go to church. I was born in Indonesia, so yeah, my mom would take, my brother and I to go to church every Sunday, even Saturday sometimes. Saturday and Sunday. I was involved in the altar server, altar surveying in a choir group, Bible study, youth group or whatnot, right? So but the faith was in my own, right? It was some kind of like some of the things that I do because my mom made me, do it. This is the thing that my mom wanted us to keep, doing. And so I didn't even know who God was, like of course, I was little, I would go to church and yeah, the priest would preach about like Jesus this, Jesus
Mhm.
that, but I didn't know who God was. God to me was just, yeah, a higher being up there, distance being
Mhm.
that I kind of go to whenever I needed something, So a prayer to him back then sounds something like, God, I have a test tomorrow, can you help me get an A, or like, God, I like this girl. Can you like help me
Yeah.
date her or something like that? So like God was just like, maybe a genie, right? Or there was a point in my life where I view God as a punisher as well, right?
Mhm.
If I fail at something or I made a mistake or like I sin, I expected something bad would happen, to
Mhm.
me. So I didn't have the right mind, right view of God. And like you said, yeah, it was during my first year in college and also actually the end of my senior year in high school where I started to question a lot about like my life, you know, because yeah, to tell you a little bit of my, by a little bit about my background story, my family. I grew up in just you might be able to relate to this, right? Within the culture that we live in as Indonesian, um, yeah, just grew up in a household where like it's very conditional. Love is conditional. Where I can get affection or attention when I can perform well, right? And not only that, I grew up in a somewhat abusive household, and more abusive in terms of verbal, emotional abuse as well. Not so much physically, but yeah, I grew up in that area. And so growing up, I just long to be loved, be loved as I am. And I was looking for this, father figure. I have a father
Mhm.
physically, but um, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, he wasn't, really there. He was absent. And so that was a, backstory. And so moving to America, when I was 13, I had just like a lot of like question, like I was like, why did I have to move here? I didn't know how to speak English, like, um, we would go to church, one night, and then after church, there, my whole family got jumped, when
Mhm.
we were walking back home, and I was like, dang, we just went to church, and this is how God would, like pay me back, right? And so I was like, nah, this is just crazy. Um, and so I remember, yeah, this is like life is tough. I don't see how God will be present, at this
Mhm.
moment. And so in high school, I just wanted to be happy, and so I didn't know what it was, and so I watched a lot of TV, social media and whatever, and I thought happiness means money,
Uh,
I have to have a lot of money. I gotta be famous. I gotta
uh,
have power, you know. And so I was like, maybe I'll like I will love for these things, and maybe I'll be happy. And so
mhm.
yeah, and in short, I was able to and to get full scholarship to go to college will make me happy because I knew my parents wouldn't be able to like pay,
Mhm.
provide for me. And so I was like, if I chase these things, it will make me happy. And so, long story short, I was able to taste a little bit of all these things, right? I was in Army JROTC, and by junior year, I was promoted to executive officer. I had power. I was also famous, in my school. People
Mhm.
know me and whatnot. The teacher were like, yeah, we know you. You don't need to come to class, whatnot. I was like, oh, that's cool,
Mhm.
and I've got full scholarship to go to Temple. I didn't have to pay for anything, and um in terms of money, I don't know if you remember, we used to side hustle, like selling shoes and stuff,
I remember
when
those days.
that was the days. And, you know, we weren't rich, but like I had the money and I
Yep.
was still living in my parents' house. I was like, dang, I'm rich. I have all these money. I can just buy whatever I want. Right.
Yep.
And I just remember senior year in high school, I was like, dang, I thought these things will make me happy. But I'm like, it's still empty,
Mhm.
like. And I remember sitting there during high school, I was like, dang, I'm questioning myself. Marcel, you're going to college, soon. 4 years after college, you're gonna graduate, you're gonna get a good job, like find a beautiful girl, marry her, have your own family, be rich, um, provide for your family, and then what? You know,
Mhm.
and then you're just gonna die.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, is that it? Is that all there is to life? And I'm like, no, there's gotta be more. There's gotta be something more to life than this. And then it wasn't until I went to college where I was like, I'm gonna take my faith seriously. Because I think I'm not happy right now. I'm suffering actually from family, trauma, family problem. And I have hope that maybe the afterlife is when I'm going to be happy. So the question is heaven or hell, right? So it's like, how can I go to heaven? Is my question because I maybe that's the place, that's the paradise that I'm going to be finally
Mhm.
happy at, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm like, how do I go there? And then I kid you not, I went on Google. I'm like, how do you get to heaven? I'm like, that's. And I praise be to God, I was able to find videos on like Christian preachers,
Yeah.
and they were like saying, like Jesus, relationship with Jesus is the key, blah 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 blah. And so I was like starting to take, I was like, okay, I need to like get behind this idea. What does that mean to have a personal relationship with Jesus?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until college I met one of my best friend, Santonio. He was the missionary. He was a missionary at Temple, which is who I and I am now as a missionary. And he started investing in friendship with me, pursuing me in friendship. And one day yeah, we just start, going, dive deep in friendship. And I went to a conference, uh, and that was when in that conference, it was a 5-day conference where, you learn a lot about relationship with Jesus, you learn about your faith. And it was in that conference where I met Jesus, in a real way, in a personal way for the first time, because I was just struggling a lot with my just myself, and I was struggling to like find my purpose. I was like, God, I'm just suffering right now, and God knew what I needed. He knows I needed a father, right? And so at
Yeah.
that moment, he said, Marcel, I'm here. Welcome home. And it was, I don't know if you know the prodigal son story. It was as if that, I felt like I'm the prodigal son who's like running back, coming back home, and the father is running towards me and say, you have a home here.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, I know you're suffering. I know back home it's tough. Your mom and dad is, I know you're struggling at home, but you have a dad in me.
Mm-hmm.
You have Jesus as your friend, and you have Mother Mary as your
Mm-hmm.
mom. And that was, yeah. And after, in college is when I'm like, I'm on fire. After that encounter, that's what you're saying. Like, I kept talking about my faith a lot in college, because I was like, after tasting that, after tasting the love of the Father, I'm like, everybody, you need to come and see this and taste
Yeah.
this. It's just like the Bible, right? The women of the well. Come see, come see the person who knew my story and tell me all I have done. And that's the thing, I wanted to, yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm here now as a missionary. I
I love
wanted to
that,
just,
man. I love
yeah,
that. And I feel like all the stuff you had just said was also an extension of who you are, because it was a lot of thematic discussions that you had mentioned. One
yeah,
being finding your purpose, the other being the family aspect of things, trying to figure out what it is that you actually deserve
yeah,
as you were growing up. Which brings me to my next curiosity, in that, you and I know that you had a very difficult upbringing in terms of things that were going on at home.
all right,
And I still believe to this day, no matter what family you come from, no matter the difficulty, there is going to be that turning moment for each of us that we can really say, I think it's time for me to figure out who I am without aligning with their agenda and without the influence and control that they have over my head.
by day you
What?
mean what, the parents?
Say that again?
By day you mean parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what was that turning point for you in terms of, I think I need to go. I need to move,
Right.
because I know that this isn't healthy for me. This isn't good for me now. This isn't good for me in the long run. Because, and I'm asking this because in our culture, well,
Yeah.
Southeast Asians in general, for a lot of our listeners and people watching, it is not normal for any of our parents' children, let alone their firstborn,
Yeah.
or their oldest, or an only son, for example,
Yeah.
to move out away from their parents' that early.
Hmm.
Right? I moved out when I was 25. still
Right.
25. I'm here. You moved out earlier than that.
Right.
And, obviously there was going to be a lot of discrepancy in the connection that you and I had with our parents, because
Mhm.
it was always like, why don't you just stay here, save some money? Why don't you just be around with the family more? They start to really guilt trip us about
Right.
going away to figure out who we are. But
Yeah.
when in reality, we don't know some of the upsides that could come with moving out away from our parents, right?
Right.
And again, also, it's not just about the emotional manipulation of it too. It's also about, why do we have to follow their agenda all the time? Like, why does
Mhm.
it come back to us to take care of them? I'm not saying don't take care of your parents. I'm not saying don't
Right.
take care of your family, but there has to be an extension of boundaries that we
Yeah.
can have with our parents to
Right.
even better understand them and even better take care of them, right? Because
Yeah.
maybe the type of care that they want from us may not be the best type of care that we can provide as a son or as a child. So what was that turning point for you, and how do you think the cultural discrepancy of being born in Indonesia and growing up in America, and sort of like, collectivism versus individualism, what was that like for you?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of things from your question that I want to address,
A
like
lot. And I do
there's a
apologize
lot.
for our listeners. It was a long-winded question, but I have the tendency to always ask, because the answer will always be no if you don't ask.
Yes, exactly. So there's a lot, right? I think there's a lot that I can answer from that. Number one is, what was the turning point of me moving away from my family? And number two, like the boundaries with our parents, from basically, yeah, Southeast Asian culture, like having boundaries with parents, because let's be honest, as someone who grew up in that, culture, boundaries, what even is that? What does that look like with our parents? Because to have boundaries with our parents, it is almost as seen as like it's like disrespectful, in the view of our parents, because he's like, I raised you my whole life and I brought you to America. You owe me basically your whole life to me.
Mm,
And let me address that real quick for those for the listener who's struggling with that, Um for those of the listener that are struggling with the parents that manipulate you and said the things that are like, I brought you to this world, and I brought you to America. I gave you this opportunity. So now you owe me, you know, the whole life, or like owe me something you gotta give back. Maybe they don't tell you, right? Maybe they don't say it in that way, but their actions and certain things, comments that they say reflect the message is the message is that. And so let me just say this right now. What is love? Love is to will the good of another person. And you guys probably heard about the agape love, unconditional love. And that's the type of love that we are called to have. Um, and that is the type of love that our God the Father has for us. And He's calling us to do the same, to have an unconditional love to everybody, especially your wife, your husband, your beloved, and your child. And here's the thing: when a husband and a wife make vows, what they make vows of? They make vows to each other.
mhm,
I promise to love you till death do us part,
mhm.
right? So that's their responsibility to basically get each other to go to heaven, to help each other to be better. Children, however, did not take that vow. So the job of the children is to be a child.
Mm,
What does it mean to be a child? Nowadays, we don't know because we have been trained, especially us in the culture. We have been trained by our parents to take care of them. We have been trained to be adult fast. I'm the oldest in my family, And I'm telling you, the the more I'm working on my healing, the more I realize, dang, that wasn't supposed to happen. Like I was like 5. Why was that? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to be in the middle of argument and take sides? Why did I have to quote unquote protect my mom from my dad? And why did I have to feel the responsibility that I had to take care of my brothers as if I'm their dad, right? So let me tell you something for the listener. That is not your job. It is not your job to be your mother's and your father's parents. That's essentially what they're asking you to do, right? Our job as their child is to be their child. And of course, the call, like when they get older, whatnot, we need to help them, or we can help them, basically, like, but there's also boundaries. And so I addressed that question a little bit. So it is not our job. And so for the longest time, I have to learn, what does it mean for me to be a son?
Mm.
I didn't know, because all I know growing up is to give, take care. And here's the thing too. It was hard for me to leave home. So this is answering your first question, right? It was hard for me to leave home. Um, because I have mentioned that I did grow up in an abusive household, and there were times where my dad would be, abusive to my mom. Very rarely, but there were times. Um, and there was this moment. It was actually a week before I had to move out of the house that the abuse happened again,
Mm.
right? And I was in the dilemma. Man, should I go? Because I already accepted this job as missionary. I already accepted this job. I can't go. Like, my whole family will be in danger.
Mm.
I don't know what my dad will do if I leave.
Yeah.
Like, my mom could be hurt bad. And how about my brothers? You know, I'm going to pause there for a second, right? From outside looking in, why did I have to bear that responsibility? Why did I feel like I need to protect? That was supposed to be my dad's job,
Mm-hmm.
to be the father and to be protector of their family. And then there was, in counseling, there was a thing that I learned. They were like, that was the job of the father. You are not the father. You are not the husband. And that's what I've been trained my whole life to be.
Mm.
And that's called triangulation. Triangulation is when one of your parents have trained you to be their, spouse, because their spouse cannot fulfill that role. So they have to go somewhere else to meet their needs. So they
Mm.
train your child to be that. So
Mm.
triangulation is like, triangulation is actually emotional incest. It happened in our day and age. And when we hear incest, we're like, dang, ew. Because we would think of incest, we think of like physical,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
But this kind of incest happens all the time in the family. We don't even know it. So
Mm.
going back to your first question, why did I move out? Um, Number one is because God has called me to be a missionary. And like as I was telling you in my little story, because of what I tasted, the freedom, the love that God has for me, I wanted other people to be able to taste this as well. And it was one of those moments where when God called me, I was scared, because as missionary, that means I have to not be afraid, to like share with people about my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, as missionary, I have to fundraise my salary, which means I have to go out and ask people for support, right? For money, financially and prayerfully, spiritually. And my dad brought me to America to be what? To be successful. meaning to have a lot of money in his eyes,
Mm,
to be rich, and he doesn't like it. He did not like it when I would go to church and practice my faith.
mm.
And so when God called me to be a missionary, I was like, oh man, no, I'm sorry, God, call me somewhere else because if I if I if I say yes to this call, you don't know what my dad will do to me.
So it was always like it was always driven by your dad's desire. What you were supposed to do, quote unquote.
Yeah, by my dad or my mom, and it was all driven by fear. I have to please them. I have to meet their needs. I have to meet their expectations, you know. And to be missionary is like, in my mind, I'm like, that's the lowest thing that they want me to do. I have listen, to ask for money in our culture. Do you think our culture loves that? It's considered what? Dang, what are you doing?
Yeah.
In America, you do that, you know, and also, yeah, like to do, like to express my faith, like that. And so I was like, God, call me somewhere else. And it was one of those moments where, like, in the Bible, you see the faith of Abraham, Moses. And it's one of those moments where, like, God was like, do you trust me?
Mm,
Do you trust me? This is the path that I want you to go. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, um, terrified, but have a lot of peace in it. I'm like, God, I can see that this is like, I know that this will fulfill my heart.
mm,
All those pains that I've experienced, I know that this is where you want me to be, and I know your plan is better than mine, so I'll do it. So why did I leave? It's because I know at the end of the tunnel, if I follow that, I will be free. I'll be free from the fear, the anxiety, and I know that God will help me to be the man that I am, a better man that, and yeah, to be the man that He wants me to be.
mhm,
So I went to an interview and I received, I accepted a job, and before, um, yeah, just like I said, like I accepted a job, but a week before I leave, that happened. So, this is something that often happen when you receive consolation, when God calls you to something and you like say yes to it, the enemy will come to you and like try to like
mm,
hold you back from the purpose that God has called you to. And that was it. Like that family thing happened. And I'm like, dang, maybe I shouldn't go because I need to protect.
mm,
And again, God was like, do you trust me? And I was like, I gotta surrender. Like, I don't understand how this will all be okay, but I know God will take care of my mom, my brothers, and my dad. It's the toughest decision I ever made, but that was 6 years ago when I left, right?
wow.
And I'm telling you right now, that was the best decision I have ever made, aside from marrying my wife, right? Again, I wouldn't be able to marry my wife if I didn't leave the house. Because leaving the house, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about why I do the things that I do because of the wounds that I received from my parents.
Mhm,
A lot of the unhealthy thoughts and cycle, I was able to break and find healing by, inviting Jesus into those memories, painful memories, and let Him heal me there, and being able to be free to be myself. And because of the boundaries that I had with my parents, I was able to love them better, you know. And here's the thing about boundaries that people oftentimes don't understand is that boundaries, to the people that are receiving the boundaries, can be like very mean, but boundaries is meant, if someone is setting boundaries with you, it means that they care about that relationship, and they want to keep it. That's why they want boundaries. They want to set boundaries. If they don't care, they can just cut you out. That's
Mhm.
it. So boundaries. So the more I learn about boundaries, the more I'm like realizing, okay, this is the place that I'm at, and whenever I come home, instead of being triggered and being like them yelling at me and I yell at them, I'm more like, okay, I can love them better. I understand where you come from because you were hurt. You were hurt as well by your parents.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean you can hurt me back though. So the cycle of hurt stopped with me. And um so I don't even know where I'm at anymore. I'm just talking, but
But
it
that's
was
no, but
God
this is
basically.
good. This is good.
Yeah.
This is good because we for even the people that are just tuning in or listening to this without any context of our friendship and who you are and what you grew up with, it sums. I think it's even more than a summary or even better than a spark note of what it is that you had to go through for you to make that decision to eventually leave because you knew that the long-term haul would be better for not just your mental health, but for your emotional and spiritual health too.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my last question, which is if there is one thing
Mm,
for the people that are either struggling to just get up and go,
mm,
the people that are scared to leave because of that guilt trip that our parents put us through, or with the parents that they are witnessing now, for the people that are just uncertain about changes, what is the one thing you think we can do to seek better?
mm. um you can't really make anyone do anything, you know? Um, so I don't think this question is like, okay, here's like the step by step thing, like you need to do. The
Mhm.
thing I can provide you, with encouragement, for the listeners, right? Um, if you are in a place where you have been stuck, you feel like you're stuck and you are unhappy. You've been in the same position, and maybe you're stuck at the home and you feel with anxiety every day in the same roof, in the same building. Oh man, oh my dad is here, or my mom is here. Oh man, is there gonna be a fight? Or like you have anxiety build up, you feel like you're stuck, you feel like you're unhappy, you're depressed, um, and you feel like you're in the same space place for the past how many years, and you want change and you're tired of where you're at. Here's my encouragement to you. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Mm,
Insane.
y'all better
Insane.
be listening. That's right.
So if you're tired of where you're at now, why not give it a try? Go. You might be paralyzed by fear. That's okay. Find a friend that loves you and care for you and seek their encouragement. Hey, can you please help me? Like, tell me I can do this. You are not responsible for other people's emotion, how they will respond. And I'm not talking just your parents, just people in general.
Mhm.
That's why I'm saying this. I can't make the listener do anything, right? I
Mhm.
don't have the power to do that. You have to do that. You are in control of your own action. You're in control of that. However, you're not in control of other people's emotion. You're in control of your emotion and your action. If you're tired, go. Like you can have conversation with your parents, which is I know this is like very broad. So if you want to like extend it to another, couple episodes. If the listener have any questions, we can extend on that. But um, you can have conversation with parents. Hey, I feel like um, I need. You don't have to explain it to them as well because that's boundaries. You just can say to them, "Hey, I need to grow and I need to move to take care of my health.
Mm,
Just trust me on this, and I need to, leave to take care of myself, and I'll let you know how I'm doing, and then you go. So, and also go find a place, when you move out, no, don't just like go out and like party and like find some place where you can just like numb your feeling.
mhm,
After you move out, you gotta be actively working on yourself. Find a community. Community is very important. Find a community of friends, brothers and sisters who love you, um, and find a counselor. Heal on those things. Explore your stories. Go into those painful, deep places that you're afraid of going, and heal those things, and have boundaries. And so, yeah, that's my encouragement. Like you stuck, you feel tired. You're insane if you want to do that over and over again, expecting different result. Try it, do a
mm,
different thing. And this different thing we're saying is have some space. Boundaries with parents is okay. And it's
mhm,
not your job to take care of them. It's your job to take care of us. Because when they take the vows to love each other, the fruit of their love is you. Part of their commitment is to take care of you.
mm,
You don't owe them anything.
mm,
That's a hot take for a lot of people but the more you learn about the God the Father, the more you understand what
mm.
it means to be a son and daughter.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here, Marcel. As always, I'm
Thank
super
you for having me.
privileged. I'm so blessed to have you come on this podcast, but more so blessed to even remain friends for this long, man. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to all of the memories that you're gonna create with your lovely wife, Brianna, and the soon to be
yeah,
dad. And I
yeah.
just want everyone listening and watching, send Marcel prayers so that all
Please
goes
do.
well. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
Peace
a lot,
out,
Julius.
everyone.
Peace.